So this is from WeGotThisCovered.com, and it is dated 1 day ago. And it says The Mandalorian will reportedly become, quote unquote, spoilers in season 3. Now, this, by the way, sounds like it's basically a rumor, so it's not really a spoiler. I don't think speculation is a spoiler unless they're trying to say they really have like this great source, inside source, which everybody claims to have inside sources, whether they do or not. It's important to remember that sometimes inside sources say things that are not true. In fact, there's a really good story that I heard about all the rumors for Empire Strikes Back. And it turned out a lot of those rumors were deliberate deception by Lucasfilm. There's a whole story about that. Maybe we'll talk about that again sometime. So anyway, this article says, as the only Star Wars project in the Disney area that doesn't have Kathleen Kennedy's fingerprints all over it, although that reportedly isn't from a lack of trying, it hasn't come as a surprise that The Mandalorian has received the most widespread acclaim from critics and fans alike. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni clearly know the source material inside out, and the first season of the show was like a breath of fresh air for a franchise that seemed determined to lean on ties to the original trilogy for as long as humanly possible. However, the upcoming second run of episodes is set to delve a little deeper into the franchise's extended canon, with the introduction of several fan-favorite characters from the animated shows that look set to lay the foundation for the next generation of Star Wars stories. We've already revealed that Disney and Lucasfilm were planning on having Filoni spearhead an MCU-style Star Wars universe on the small screen. And now we've heard from our sources, the same ones that told us Ahsoka Tano would be appearing in The Mandalorian months before Rosario Dawson's casting was announced, that the title character will eventually end up harnessing the power of the Jedi and ultimately become one. Anthony, if you're still here, this is the little piece that I wanted to give you. So there is a rumor that this particular source, WeGotThisCovered.com, is claiming they have a good source that says in season 3, the Mandalorian is going to get the Darksaber and become a Jedi. Have you heard about this rumor, Dave?
I mean, I hadn't heard about it specifically. I'd heard speculation. So I didn't realize that. I mean, I'm not surprised there's people running stories about it. So we'll have to see. I'm very curious to see what they do with Ahsoka Tano. For those of us that watch the last season of the Clone Wars and see kind of where she is at the end of the Clone Wars, and then also number 2, to know kind of where she is actually towards the end of Rebels. It'll be very curious to see what they decide to do with Ahsoka just in general. It would kind of make sense, and it would follow that through line through. Ahsoka is one of those characters, kind of like the Child. I think the Child's probably a little bit more popular than Ahsoka, but I think that's just because the Child's been in live action. Ahsoka's been, more a figure of the animation world. But she's a very, very popular character. I mean, she's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. I really enjoyed watching her journey in the Clone Wars. So I will have to see, but it would make sense. But I'm very curious to see what they decide to do with Ahsoka. How large of a role she's going to play, and I'm curious too, because I also think the Darksaber, in all honesty, should just be returned to Mandalore. And basically be for Mandalorian culture, because it's an important artifact, for their history. So we'll have to see what they decide to do. I don't know. I think that there could be, as Anthony speculated too, that idea that eventually the Darksaber would wind up in the hands of the Child. I kind of thought that's where that was headed, but we'll have to just see. I think it all is going to depend upon what they finally decide to do with Ahsoka, whether she's just around for a couple of episodes or she's kind of like an Obi-Wan type character and helps the Mando, learn more about the Child and the Force, because clearly Mando doesn't understand anything about the Force, and nor
do any of weird, by the way. there's this thing, and fans talk about it in some of the other aspects of Star Wars, where there seems to be this kind of weird fog about about the Jedi and the Force that doesn't quite make sense. Like a lot of people have gone back and said, like Han Solo's attitude in the original Star Wars doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's like the Jedi haven't been gone that long, and Han is older than Luke. So Han should actually have at least some sort of like his parents told him about the Jedi or something like that. It's not like they've been extinct for 100 years or or even 50 years. I mean, it was only like 20 years ago that the Jedi were taken out. So it's not even it's basically not even quite one generation yet. And so it's kind of strange. And you have the same thing. I mean, I think we even talked about this in that particular episode, where the last episode of The Mandalorian, episode 8. I think we even talked about the attitude of the blacksmith and how she was talking to the Mandalorian about the Jedi and talking about this race of like wizard warriors, and the Mandalorian was like, what? And it's kind of like, well, the Mandalorian was a kid during the Clone Wars, which the Jedi were all over the place during the Clone Wars. So it's like, how do you not know this? You know what I mean? So there is some inconsistency when it comes to Star Wars about the people's knowledge of this stuff, and it seems a little bit weird. The question that I have about this rumor, if it's true, is how does it fit into Disney Wars? Because in Disney Wars, we know that Luke at least tried to do like some sort of a new Jedi Academy, but it was a horrible failure. And Kylo Ren ended up killing everybody. So it's like, how exactly would it fit in for the Mandalorian to become a Jedi? And by the way, that would also imply that within the next 30 years, well, 25 years, right? Within the next 25 years, he has to die, because obviously there are no Jedi by the time The Force Awakens comes around. So that's the larger question I would have is, so what would that mean about the ultimate fate of the Mandalorian himself if somehow, let's say, he gets associated with Luke's Jedi Academy and he becomes a Jedi and all that kind of stuff? Wouldn't that mean he's going to be killed by Kylo Ren?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you would think.
That's the problem with Disney Wars. That's the problem.
Yeah,
you have to fit it into that garbage. And because, like I said, I am not a Disney War fan. So it's like you're gonna, you have to fit it into that continuity. Granted, that is still 25 years off, right? But we don't know when Kylo Ren destroyed the quote unquote like new Jedi Academy. We don't know that. That wasn't established very well in the movies. We can assume it's probably maybe like within 10, 15 years of The Mandalorian is when that happens, something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly, like I said, I'm kind of hoping that they're not going to spend too much time worrying with how to connect the dots. But we'll just have to see what they ultimately decide to do. Like I said, it's pretty obvious they're going to lean pretty heavy into Clone Wars. And they'll need to sync it up at some point, at least towards the end of The Mandalorian, to explain how, these events either do or do not reflect anything that happens in the Disney world. So we'll have to see.
What would be really interesting is if they just dumped Disney Wars. If they just said, yeah, we're just not going to deal with any of that. We're just going to pretend like none of that happened. You know what I mean? Or none of that's going to happen. Like we're just going to go in our own direction.